we could fly.
Welcome to this new season of the Have a Cup of Johanny podcast. So I want to title this new season that I'm embarking on with I'm Growing. So this is going to be the season of growth. And that's what I'm going to share with you throughout the season. So I thank you for coming over here and sitting with me. And I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. So on today's episode of Have a Cup of Johanny, we are going to discuss my latest read, which was The Woman in Me, written by Britney Spears, narrated by the amazing Michelle Williams. Fushizzle. Oh God, that sounded so cringe. Never mind. Are you ready? Let's get it. Jesus, oh, please don't share that with anyone. But I've listened to The Woman in Me, and let me tell you, so it took me for a ride. It gripped me right from the beginning. I could not listen to it. I was hooked from the beginning. And I think Michelle Williams did an amazing job narrating this book. Amazing job. And I recommend it to all, not just, those of us that grew up with Britney. I didn't necessarily grow up with her. I was already kind of like a teenager when she came out with Baby One More Time. But I think this book, it's an eye-opener of sorts for people. For a lot of people. And to me, and this is what I'm going to try to focus this episode on, it kind of validated the fact that we are still in this society where we are so okay with controlling a woman, but not a man. And that is something that was so prevalent. And whether Britney did that on purpose or not in her book. I mean, that's what I got from the very beginning all the way to the end. So in a nutshell, The Woman in Me is not just the memoir for Britney Spears, but it tells the reader the story of a young girl that had a passion for entertaining and wanted to do that on a big scale. But that dream turned into a nightmare when her parents, especially her dad, started controlling it and making it something that was theirs as opposed to something that really belonged to Britney. So let me explain. There was instances in Britney's memoir, in her book, where you see her parents controlling her narrative and controlling the way that she thinks and acts. So from the very beginning, we see how Britney Spears is taught to be this cute woman that abides by the rules and that it is a people pleaser. I don't think that any kid, I turned out to be a people pleaser. And I think that had a lot to do with just the trauma that I incurred and the way that the adults that had a hand in raising me controlled me instead of allowing me to be the person that I wanted to be. And I saw that in Britney's book because no kid really grows up wanting to do, just please every person except for themselves, right? I don't think that's the truth there. So when I see adults like myself that grew up to be people pleaser, I already know that there was something in that childhood that turned them to be that way. And that's what you see in Britney Spears. You see kind of like this guilt tripping that occurred from the very beginning of this child's life, where she felt as if the livelihood of her family was on her shoulders. And she became the breadwinner as a minor. She became the breadwinner for her entire family. And the thing is that then her family turned on her, and they weren't just happy with her, giving back to them. They wanted to control everything. So here's the deal, right? Britney was growing. And even if you are, like for me, right, I was a goody two shoes. I think that's how you say it. That's how you say that English thing. Since I was little, right? I think that's more trauma than anything else. I don't think that's my affinity because when I dig deep inside of me, I'm more of a rebellious person that if you tell me to go left, I'll go right just for shits and giggles, just to see what happens. But when I was little, I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. And that's where I saw a lot of similarities, is that I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to make the adults around me angry. And I felt that it was my job to be really, really good. So that way the adults around me wouldn't feel bad, wouldn't get angry. So just imagine that, right? Coming from a child where they feel like that is a responsibility that is on their shoulders, how the adults around them will feel. And I think that's why people call it being an empath, but I think it's just trauma as to why I'm so good at kind of like, ascertaining how people feel around me and their emotions and their sensitivities. But that's just because I grew up in an environment where I had to be vigilant about that. Because then if they weren't happy, then, there will be repercussions of that. And it was the same thing that Britney Spears was describing in her book, how she will feel it from her mom. So she says in there how she was so angry at her mom for being so mad, right? And this is coming from a child that doesn't really understand what is going on, but she knows her dad drinks a lot. That's how she describes it. She knows her dad drinks, and she knows that he leaves the home when he goes through his binge drinkings. And she even said in her book, she was like, at least my dad had that going for himself, right? That's not verbatim, by the way. But she explained how she appreciated that at least her father left the home, so that way she wouldn't have to witness that. But her mom would just stay there, and then she will feel the wrath of when her mom was angry, right, was sad, or was depressed. So she ended up kind of like being angry and having this grudge against her mom, right? So, and here I am thinking, I'm like, that is so sad, but it's completely, for me, it's completely relatable, and I can completely understand why a kid will feel that way while still not acknowledging the roles in here, mother and father, and how at the end of the day, the mother always felt responsible for staying behind in the home to take care of the kids, even when they were going through their own angry or depressive states, right? The mom had to be the one to sacrifice while the dad could go off, get a hotel or do whatever, outside of their home and get it all out of his system. But the mom had to stay there. And there are certain things that Britney describes or explains at the beginning of the book that is kind of like, it's a foreshadowing of things. And I think that's why I was so hooked on this book, because once again, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but she wrote a gripping tale. A gripping nonfiction tale of her life. And it was a lot of foreshadowing at the beginning, because we see that, right? We see that in her mom and dad, and how she grew up around them with all these issues. And then even before that, before the book even starts, the beginning part tells how Britney Spears, her grandmother, her dad's mom, right, supposedly went insane, and she was admitted to an asylum. And then And then her dad's stepmom as well, right? Started like acting up, and then they put her on an asylum as well. Her spouse, right? Put her in an asylum. And then the spouse, who was Britney Spears' father, was just really stringent, really like this drill sergeant figure. That's how it was described, that it would just push her dad to do things to the point of exhaustion, to the point of sometimes injury. And for Britney Spears' grandfather, sports was a big thing. Basketball, for example, was a big thing. And her dad practiced over and over and over. And it was this very stringent regimen that her father grew around. So you see, it was like all these stories of the people that are part of Britney Spears' ancestry, per se, lived a life that would give us a glimpse of how Britney Spears' life will turn out. So as you can see, right, she grew up knowing that when her grandmother and her step-grandmother acted out, had big emotions, they were thrown into an asylum. And then we see here how mental health illnesses ran in her family line as well. That's something that we see here. But like Britney says in her book, the talk about mental health was not really there when she was going through her mental health spells after having postpartum depression and all of that. The talks, the conversations, the education, the knowledge was not really there at that time. The education was there, so let me fix that real quick. It's just the knowledge and the infiltration of what mental health is and how we can make that a little bit better for ourselves was not ingrained into the culture just yet. We were still very much stuck in weird old ways. We see this foreshadowing, right? And then throughout the book, we see kind of like the unfolding of her career and how Britney wanted certain things and how at the beginning she was supported in those endeavors. But I think she was supported in those endeavors because she was producing and she was behaving in an acceptable way for her parents. So I think that taught Britney a lesson that if she behaves the way her parents want her to behave, she will be supported and she will get the love and attention that she needs from them. Right, because that's what we see here at the beginning. Britney is really good. She loves dancing. She dances to her heart's content. She auditions. When she says she doesn't want to be in the play because they were doing it during Christmas and she didn't want to miss Christmas, and she is supported through that as well. And things are really going well for her. But then her career goes astronomically high, right? We raise the stakes when she gets a record deal and her first song out there, it's a massive hit. And I think this is where her parents are like, oh shit, okay, there's a lot of money in this. We are making some money. But then during that time, Britney is also growing up and she's been growing up, and she explains how she was smoking cigarettes. She was having relationships with a little boyfriend in high school that she had. She made out and all those things. All these things are normal things that happen to boys and girls, to kids in that age, right? We're experimenting, we understanding who we are, what we want, what we like, right? And how do we get to that point is by really experimenting and going out and trying things. And that's what this girl was doing. And really is nothing abnormal about that. But when she makes it big, that side of her gets, it gets erased. It gets kind of like taken away because now we have people over her that are controlling her, so that way they can control the output of her. Mind you, this is a whole human being that we have here. Britney Spears is a human being. But as she continues to progress, her humanity, it's erased little by little, because now the people around her, I believe, this is just my opinion, are seeing dollar signs as opposed to seeing a whole human being that needs help, that needs rest, just like the rest of us. But when it comes to money, and I'm sure you all have seen that, right? We're in a capitalistic culture here in the Western world. It's that when it comes to money, it is like it brings with it power. It brings with it this corruption of sorts. Not because I don't believe money is evil. I think money is awesome. It can do some great things for people. It can take a lot of stress away. But when people...
We'll be right back.
Are you ready to embark on a captivating journey of resilience and revelation? Get ready to immerse yourself in the extraordinary world of Isla Delgado, a 9-year-old girl who has experienced more than her fair share of trauma. Isla's life takes a dramatic turn when she's forced to live with her dad and his new wife for 6 months. Her anxiety intensifies as she becomes convinced that her stepmom is an evil witch. But Isla is determined to protect herself and expose her stepmom's true nature. As the gripping story unfolds, Isla discovers that things aren't always as they seem. Join her on a transformative journey of self-discovery, where she learns that even the most traumatic experiences can be triumphantly overcome with the power of love and understanding. People are saying, while the alarming trend of attempting to ban books continues in the United States, this book is a fantastic reminder of the power that books have. A child will read this story and feel seen, heard, and hopefully feel some peace. For children of the appropriate age, this book provides the opportunity for a wonderful exercise in empathy. The message of the story is truly something a lot of children out there, and even some adults, might need to hear. Mrs. Francie's Evil Ring and the 6 Months That Changed Everything is a heartwarming tale that explores the profound theme of family, trust, and the power of compassion. This inspiring story will leave listeners of all ages feeling uplifted and inspired. Don't miss out on this middle grade read and be prepared to be captivated by a story that will touch your heart and ignite your imagination. Mrs. Francie's Evil Ring is available everywhere books are sold.
define themselves by it, or when people get addicted to it to the point where they just keep amassing, as opposed to using it for what it's worth, which is really, it's just transactions, right? That's what money is good for. To have transactions, successful transactions out there. So that way you can gain more rest, you can gain more time, and also you can gain more materialistic goods that do provide you temporary happiness, right? Not permanent, but temporary. But you can also buy some experiences that give you a more permanent source of happiness, right? So that's what money brings. So I don't think money is evil, but I think how we perceive it can make a situation evil per se, right? Or can make a situation really counterproductive to humanity, to being a human being in this world. And that's what we see here. People saw how big this can get in the form of acquiring money and amassing it. And then they felt threatened when this person, Britney Spears, who was the one making all this money, would say, I need some rest, or would say, I need to decompress. I need to go and have fun, right? Anything that kept her from essentially making money, recording albums, doing interviews, keeping her out of the spotlight, because she needed that at certain points in her life. That's what she says in this book. But time and time again, her parents, her dad specifically, who was managing her, would say, no, you're going to do this instead. So it's almost as if the people that were supposed to protect her and love her the most, her parents,
were the ones that put her in harm's way. And then when she mentally broke, then they went in to control her life and to implement a conservatorship that will really control her life, period. Like, one thing that I learned in this book, I did not know the extent of the conservatorship. Like, I kind of knew, right, from the name and the definition what conservatorship was, but I always thought that it was used on those people that were incapable physically and mentally to take care of themselves. And I always saw it as a way to help that person. But the way that Britney Spears and the woman in me, she described it, it was this nightmare. It was this horrific event where everything in her life was controlled. So just imagine, right, being a person, and you are in your full mental capabilities, right? You are in your full physical capabilities. You're able to do all of this. You just really needed that support system to recover from certain things. Remember, Britney Spears went through a big breakup in her life. And oh God, go into my Medium profile and you will see that I have suffered some great breakups. And I am telling you, like, people may laugh at this, but those are big events, especially when you love that person so much and you trusted them so much. To have a one-sided breakup happen, it really can hurt quite a lot. So it is, for me, it is very believable and probable, the events that occurred for Britney Spears, because she saw the love of her life, text her and say, that's it, this is it for us, we can't go any further. When she didn't even see that coming, that's one. And then two, she was just made to continue to work as opposed to stop, give herself a break, pause, so that way she can process that. And that's where, her team kind of failed her at the beginning. And then we see her try to bounce back through different relationships, right? Un clavo saca otro clavo. I know, been there, done that as well. Right? And we all know that shit don't work, right? Because you haven't given yourself time to process the last relationship and to get over it and to find yourself again, who you are without this person. Because a lot of the times when we are in these relationships, they become us. And then we lose ourselves in it. And I think that's what happened to Britney Spears, but she was never able to recover it. She just went on to other relationships. And then she finds herself with Kevin Federline, and they have 2 kids back to back. And mind you, the foreshadowing at the beginning of this book, right, of her great grandmother and how she was put in an asylum. And now I'm putting 2 and 2 together. Maybe her great grandmother had postpartum depression. Maybe she had those big emotions and no one knew what to do with it. So they just shut her up and shut the door and locked it and hit the key. And then we see this happening with Britney Spears. Britney Spears was suffering from postpartum depression. That's one. And then she suffers another great loss in that relationship that she had with Kevin Federline. Here it is, another person who she fell head over heels in love with, who breaks up with her once again out of nowhere because she thinks, right, I'm putting in the work, this is going to work, we have 2 babies, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden the guy is becoming more distant from her little by little until he says he doesn't want to be, he threatens that he's going to do divorce papers and she better do it first or else she'll be embarrassed. So she's going through a divorce. And on top of the divorce, shortly after, she's fighting for custody of her children. And then she breaks when she knows that she's going to lose custody of her children, that she will have to go through Kevin Federline to be able to see her kids. So just imagine. And once again, this is very, very believable for me and very relatable because I'm a mom. I was a single mom, and I can just imagine if I would have lost custody of my child. You know, what that would have done for me. I mean, I get sick whenever I'm apart from him and I have to check on him. And he's a grown ass adult right now. And I still check on him because it's like, it's almost like his livelihood is directly tied to mine. And if something happens to him, I will hurt just as much, if not more, because that's a part of me that is out there in the world. I've really found it very relatable. The depth of fear, of anger, of sadness that she had, because she just had these baby with postpartum depression, now a divorce, now a custody battle. I mean, just imagine all that shit on somebody's shoulders. Wouldn't they have broken down? I know I would have had. You know, I would have broken down. I would have needed some help when it comes to nourishment from those people that I trust and love, support to be there. I would have needed my team to really hold their arms out for me and help me deal with it. But instead, what they did was they took over Britney Spears' rights, took it all away from her, took all of that and manage her to the point where she was like an employee for them. And this is the problem that I had, because what this person needed, what Britney Spears needed, was someone to be on her side, to help her out, to help her deal, to be a sounding board for her, to encourage her to seek mental health on her own terms. But instead, what happened was they went to court, took all her rights away from her. She was no longer an adult. It was almost like, and she says it herself, like she regressed back to being a child, because her father had a whole schedule for her where he told her exactly what to do every hour on the hour, to include a wake up time and a bedtime. And mind you, Britney Spears is still physically capable, is still mentally capable. Okay. Just think about that. There's so many people in the world that have gone through postpartum depression, that have gone through depression, anger issues, and all of that, right? They seek help. They seek help. They get help, right? Or their families try to encourage them and push them in that way. But they don't usually get the rights taken away from them and then go back into being a child, and then their parents are the ones to dictate every second of their life from then on. This happened because they fear that the monetary compensation will cease to exist when Britney Spears would try to get herself better. They thought that she would probably end up doing something worse, hurting herself or something like that, and then the monetary thing will stop. I think the fear of the stoppage of money coming in from Britney Spears, she was the source. I think that's what drove her family to do this. I don't think they did it because they cared for her. Because if they did, the conservatorship would not have lasted for like 13 years. I think that's what she said, that it was a 13-year conservatorship one. And I think that instead of having her work through the conservatorship the way that they did, I think they would have invested more in her health, and they would have invested more in her rest, and in her like having great friendships, right? And coming together with family, and having that be the source of nourishment for her until she was strong enough to be on her feet. I think if they really cared about her, I think we would have seen something like that, as opposed to just this conservatorship that turned her into a robot and turned her into this constantly working robot where she had very little time to herself, and she couldn't even have freedom to do the things that she wanted to do. That's what kills me here too, because it's like,
If you really care, you would allowed her to have friends. If you really care, you would allowed her to pursue things on her own. So that way, once again, she can find who she truly is. I don't think she ever had that opportunity to do that because she has been working since she was a child. So I think if they would have cared for her and not just for the money, the conservatorship would either not have been there at all or would have been short-lived or would have been something really different that would have evolved Britney into a more stable and either happier or content person. But instead, what we see is this person that gritted their teeth through the entire conservatorship, became angry and distrustful of her family members, which really tells me a lot about the family members. And it turned her into someone who is now fiercely independent and would rather not lean on other people because of the fears that they may take advantage of her. So if anything, this conservatorship ended up traumatizing her even more. So, folks, if you haven't read The Woman in Me, I encourage you to go ahead and read it. Go ahead and listen to it. It's on audiobook. It's also on Kindle. It's also on paperback and hardback, and you can find it anywhere that books are sold. If you want to see really the exemplification of how easy it is to take away and control a woman, right? As opposed to a man, because she says it in there, like her brother went through some trials and tribulations as well, right? But a conservatorship was not implemented in him, right? It was just on her. So I am telling you, it is a big bias there of just this mindset that it is okay to control a woman, because obviously, why would a woman know how to live her life, right? Why? Read it, go and read it, go seek it out. Let me know what you think. Feel free to chat with me either on my website, haveacupofjoanny.com, or email me at joa@haveacupofjoanny.com. I will see you next Wednesday for a new episode every Wednesday. Bye.
Oh, we could fly.
Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the show. See you on the next episode. Bye.
Oh, we could fly.